So I thought I'd talk a little bit about my reading experience for Alchemised. It was a lot emotionally. I went into this book not knowing or having a idea of what it was really. I'd read the description obviously, but like months ago, and then I put it on my Libby as like a want to read. And like I've got to say October, and I didn't get the actual Libby until like 2 days before the end of the year. And so I got it, and I kept on seeing all these people on TikTok saying, oh my god, this is such an amazing book. Oh my god, this is such an amazing fantasy novel. And I think I was in a place, and I'd gotten to this realization for my reading for the new year that I kind of wanted to go into quality over quantity, because I got into a really big reading slump in like October, November last year, and it was so disheartening because I just couldn't find books that I was interested in anymore. Like I didn't have any that I was like, oh my god. There were some, but there wasn't enough that kept me going because I didn't really know what I wanted to read. And I started getting into my stride towards the end of the year with more of women's literature, some deep fantasy novels a little bit. And so I was like, let's pick up Alchemised. It's here. Let's get into it. It is very, very rare for a book series to grip me from the first page. I didn't know anything going into it. this is obviously spoiler full, so be aware of that. But the opening scene, her being in a tank, I was like, what the fuck is going on? I was like, where is this? What do you mean? Like, is this a cult? I really thought I was like, oh, she was in a cult. That makes sense. But no, it was like, the cover doesn't even do it justice. The darkness and sadness of this universe was something that I don't think I've emotionally experienced. I think emotionally wise, I haven't felt this bad. I didn't feel that badly or that torn up since The Woman and The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. And those are some those two books destroyed me emotionally. And I still, it's one of those types of books that take me back every single time I even think about it or look at it. Where do I even start? I think people have said they didn't I was listening to a podcast recently, kind of about their discourse on it, and I disagreed with their thought process in that they thought part one should have been where part two was, but I disagree. I think going into it, me not knowing anything at all, I didn't even know this was a fan fiction beforehand, just going into it blind completely. I think having that, reading what I read in part one, then getting the backstory in part two, made this so much more thought out and me feel so much more connected to the characters, being like, oh my god, me remembering what she remembers basically in the same way. And it's just like, oh, I did it on my notes app. I couldn't even type it. This is probably I had to say 11:30 p.m. at night when I was finished the book. And I was just getting sick too, and so it was very emotional, but I typed it all up. Let me find it. No, I did voice note. I'm just gonna read you the crazy voice note that I left. It said, part one was so crazy. I just wanted to know what was going on. How is this working? Where was she going? Why is she in this situation? I knew we were gonna get an explanation at some point, but then we got to part two, and part two was just so emotional in all aspects that it made me unconditionally soft and in pain for her. And because of all the points where you went back to thinking you saw part one, this is where that came into play. The repeat of sentences. There was there's not even one or two times. I don't know how this woman did this, but there was at least 3 or 4 times in the flashbacks in part two of what happened in that 3 year time that she said something so similar in part one, and then seeing knowing his reaction to her saying something in part one, and then seeing what he said the first time hurt so much more. There was one visceral moment, and it was oh god, I'm gonna have to find it. I think I highlighted some quotes, so I'll come back to that, but there were so many times where I just was oh, that just hurt my soul. In the way that I got emotionally hurt during Sunshine on the Reaping, where it felt like I was at a family reunion that I didn't know I was going to, that's kind of how I felt in part 2, where I was like, oh, I know them, but I don't know them. And I'm learning so many things about them in this one area. Okay, continuing with my thoughts. But then I was like uncontrollably crying in this, please stop. And then we get to part 3 and you're just like, there's no way that's gonna end well. How are we gonna get out of this? Again, I went into this with no knowledge whatsoever of this book series or this book in general. I was terrified it was a series. I was like, I don't know if there's a second book. I don't know if I'm about to be left on a cliffhanger. I had no knowledge. And so I didn't want to look it up because I thought that would ruin it, like knowing whether or not there was something else coming. And so I was like, okay, we're just gonna go in, we're gonna accept the unknown and what is there and then move forward with it. But that's kind of where I was. I was like, how are we gonna get out of this? Like, how do they survive emotionally after that? Not even physically. Physically, I was like, I was so sure that dude was gonna die. I was so sure. I was like, one of these people is gonna die. Like, there's no way. And I was like, and it wasn't even like a happy ending. It was heartbreaking the way it ended. It was just like, I didn't think they were gonna survive. And honestly, did they survive that? Because what they're doing is survival, but it's not like they're living, but it's like living through emotional pain that they have to accept for the rest of their lives now. And he's not going to be able to ever forgive himself. She's not going to be able to ever forgive herself for the things that she's done that led to these things. Okay, back to what I was saying. I said they've been traumatized. In what world can they survive? And then they do. And then their kids are the ones that too have to live with all that information. That ending with her going to the island, I'll start crying again, but her going back to the island and being like, seeing like her family history there and them never being able to share that information, her having to have that burden, not because her parents wanted to put her like in that position, but because she needed to know the burden of that knowledge and the knowledge that everyone else will never know and can never know technically was so much more painful, I think, because like she was a little bit more grown in that situation. So it's just like her coming into the realization of like the darkness of humanity at such a young age, I think is what hurt me so much. And I was like, or there was this sentence where I was like, and they have to live with all that information and know that there's no way they can change it or let the world know that they were actually heroes of the story. And it's just like, no, the last line, because she was I'll start crying again. That line breaks me. She was a non-active member of the order. I said, I am traumatized. And I said again, I am truly traumatized. Because it is traumatic. Because it's just like all these people in history, and I think that's what got me in The Woman also. All of these people. And you know, like the way she wrote this was a perfect war novel. Perfect. Because when you think about this, like what's going on today? Do we even actually know the full story about anything anymore? And the people, and they convey this perfectly in the novel. The heroes of the story tell the story. Those who lost, theirs is erased. Let's be perfectly honest. Do we actually know what's going on? This makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but like the heroes of the story in this one changed the entire backstory. So they sounded so much better. So there's no way for us to actually know, like, that's what truly happened. And then you're just getting misinformation. And it was just traumatizing and emotionally painful. What else was there? Oh, I literally hate, I think it's Lila. Hate her. Hate her. Because the way she looked down upon her the entire time that they were like friends, best friends, did everything together, looked down upon her while she was working in the hospital with her magic. And then she had the same magic. And then has the audacity at the end of the novel to be saying, well, he did terrible things. What did you do? What did you do that truly, you made the situation worse? You made the situation worse, and you have no right to act the way you are acting. It's the self-righteousness that I think got me in so many aspects of this. And it's so, like, the religious aspect, that truly, I think that's what made the book. I think the religious control that they had in the book, oh my God, it was so good. I'll take you through some of my quotes, and then I'll like try to like come up with like a clear thought at the end of how I feel about it fully. What was my first one? Okay, so a lot of these are just cursing. So there was one, this is during the flashback during part 2. You're Mariano, I know. This is Marty, Rumley, Claire Rebeck, and Anne Stofey. I'm Elaine Boyle. I wanted to scream. I was like, oh my God, we're meeting Elaine. I was like, oh my God, we're meeting Elaine. Because she seemed like she was a part of like the first, like part 1. We kind of know who she is. We think she's the one who did all this and she was so magnificent. No. She was they erased her from history, and so then Elaine got all the credit, even though she was a terrible, terrible healer. Oh my God, okay. I get very heated about this novel. The next one, and I said, what the fuck? WTF, specifically, and exclamation points to that one. And then this is the other one. As he was regaining consciousness, she took his nearest hand. Careful not to shift his shoulder, she started massaging the palm and worked slowly to his fingertips, knuckle by knuckle, her resonance seeking out every bit of tension and knotted muscles. And I said WTF crying, because that's literally what he did for her in part 1, and she didn't even know, and she couldn't connect with it. And it's just so, like, oh. There's so many points, and like it's not like they ever redeemed themselves. I think she did at some points. I think she accepted who she was. I think he never had to. He knew who he was. I was like, Maddie knew who she was from a young age. He knew who he was. He's never changing that. He has never made a point where he's like, I'm gonna become a nicer guy. No. And you can appreciate that. No character development, but I appreciate that he was like, I know who I am, and I'm sticking with it, and it kept them alive, to be perfectly honest. But just that emotional pain and like knowing what you know happens. Okay, so what's the other one? Okay. This is how insignificant this man is to me. I forgot his name. It's the Lancaster dude. This is the line. People are going to know the Lancasters. This is from when he was being tortured or being like pumped for information in the tunnels, and she helped him and like got him healed up. And he said people are going to know the Lancasters, and describing all the ways he was going to hurt her. And I literally wrote, slimy son of a bitch. You slimy son of a bitch, and you were gutted in a hospital. I said, go for it. That was too much. Knowing what you knew and how he died later, it was like perfect. As he should. As he should. Okay. Oh, man. The other one was, you could be a healer, she finally said as he removed the block on her nerves. She flexed her hand, opening and closing. It was still sore and fragile as though hairline fractured. You have natural talent for it. That's one of the most ironic things anyone has ever said to me. He said quietly. And like, truly, you could be a healer. And like, that's a full thought throughout like the entire novel. It's just her just saying, you could be a healer. And him being like, I know who I am. I'm not a healer. It's just like, again, that's what I'm like, he knows who he is. But I thought that was just like so sweet, and I was crying. And then the other one was, it doesn't matter what happens to you, you will still be mine. And there's something in any other context, maybe not, like, I don't know what it was about it. His possessiveness, I think controlling nature worked in this situation. I don't know how. It did feel like controlling. It felt like, oh my God, no, like possessiveness. But you got it. Like, you understood, like I said, like, you understand him. You understand who he is. It's not there's not anything you're going to be able to do to change that. He's just possessive. And you understand why. All the shit that he went through with his mother, he's going to be possessive and scared and controlling. And so it's like that line in what originally, I think it's the original thought that terrified her. That terrified her when they first met in that tower room. And he was like, "You're mine." And she was like, "God, I'm going to be stuck like this for the rest of my life." And then those same words being used as comfort closer to the end of the story, being like, oh, that's just what, like, she felt like she had no one. And so that's why she even got put in the situation in the beginning. She had no one. But her knowing, even in the possessive nature, it's so fucked up. It is fucked up. But even in the possessive way that he's done it, he gave her something that she was always looking for. Always. And then I have two more. Oh my god, this one's gonna make me cry. I'm actually gonna tear up on camera. Because this one really made me think of Hunger Games. It says, and I just kept on repeating like a specific line in my head when I was reading this. It says, "Why do you have holes in your wrists?" Enid asked. "No one else has holes like that." And I said, "Hunger Games," crying. And it's just like, I just kept on repeating in my head because it's so true. And I think that's why I love about these two authors, that they could do something like this and being like, I just kept on repeating the last line in Hunger Games, or that last little section where she's like, "There are worse games to play." Like, they're never gonna know. Thank God they're not, but they're never going to know what we went through. There are worse things to go through. And her being like, why are there holes there? And her having to come to that realization, like, I don't know how to explain this to such a tiny child. And being like, how do I share all of that pain with someone so they understand me more, but also protecting their innocence of the situation? Like, that just gutted me. That gutted me. And I was like, oh, how do you go about that? How do you handle that pain? But that just was too much. And then the last line, obviously, that's something I won't get tattooed, but it's tattooed on my soul. Let's be perfectly honest. That is tattooed on my soul. And it said, "She was a non-active member of the Order of the Eternal Flame and did not fight." I wanted to throw my Kindle across the room. I wanted to throw it across the room because I said, how fucking this is just gonna be a cursing video. I literally was like, how fucking dare they? How dare they do that? How dare they? And it was so... It just makes you... The injustice of it all just makes you want to scream. And, like, I finished it. I felt like I got closure, but I didn't get closure at the end of it. And I've never been so happy this was a standalone novel. Never been so happy. I was like, thank God. Because I think any other trilogies or series, we would have lost. I think the main point of this is that, one, this is a war novel. And two, war isn't clean. War is not clear. It's not direct. It is messy. It is messy. And there's gray everywhere. It is not black and white. These people are not good people. She did some things that made the situation, like the manacles, so much worse. She researched that. She unwittingly gave them that information. He did things that made the situation so much worse by basically throwing some people under the bus. But they're not good people, but they did things in the way they thought they could. And you have to accept that. You have to accept that they thought they were doing the best they could. And hindsight is everything, obviously, and they realize that too. And I think that's so important to think about in life. And like, you can't judge people by their worst times in their life. You really can't. And you have to understand it. You can't be looking at it from a face value, because you're never going to know what you're going to be doing in that situation, perfectly honest. Because the positions they were put in, not even that they put themselves in, that they were put in, force them to make decisions that hurt everyone in themselves, ultimately. And you have to understand that about them. And I think that's what was both heartbreaking and amazing about the story, is that like even Enid at the end being like, my dad like doesn't know, like he can't look at me sometimes after he's had to explain something when she asks a question, or like how her mom like will try to answer it but she has a bad heart and she'll like cry too much and it hurts her, because I'm like, I'm happy she knows the truth of it and that she can understand why that's happening so the trauma doesn't continue, but at the same time, like, God, man. This book will live in my soul for the rest of my life. It is that truly and emotionally painful. I have no other words for it. This is God tier, 6-star book. And probably one of the best fantasy novels I've read this decade. Let's be perfectly honest. I love Throne of Glass. Not going to say that that doesn't hit the same, but I think this really got to me emotionally, and I think changed me. Like I will hear commentary about it, obviously, but I also won't hear commentary about it. Like the podcast I was listening to, I was getting kind of annoyed because they kept on being like, well, I read the fanfic first and like I feel like that ruined. I'm like, obviously, so then don't talk about it if you hated the fanfic. I'm like, what are you talking about? Also, and this about took me out when I found this out, that the fan fiction is based off of a Hermione fanfic. And I realized not two of my favorite fantasy creations on the planet and universes being based off of Harry Potter fanfic. Because if I found out that the Mortal Instruments original series was based off of that, and that took me out emotionally. And I was like, so Harry Potter really is the thought behind everything. Really is the thought behind everything. It is the end all be all. But this book series is everything. Okay, back to regularly scheduled programming.
Sunlight spills on the window. The aroma of coffee fills the air. Lazy cat is curled up on the sofa. Time passes so slowly as if it were hidden away. Wind gently blew across the face. Pleasant melody lingers softly in the ear. All the troubles are taken away at this moment. Oh, my Sunday, no worries but only niceness. Oh, my Sunday, as if world stands still. Only my heartbeat could be heard. Smile and laugh heartily all by myself. The sound of pages on the table being turned by the wind. The casual chat of sparrows outside the window. The leaves blown by the wind are still rustling. How melodious everything is, just quietly